Hello everyone, I'm Katherine Woodfine. I'm the author of the Sinclair's Mysteries and the Taylor and Rose Secret Agent series, as well as this new book, A Dancer's Dream, illustrated by Lizzy Stewart. For my Christmas jumper storytime video, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the story behind this new book. A Dancer's Dream actually began its life as a short story entitled Cass and Rosette, or in English, The Nutcracker, which I wrote for this lovely short story collection, Winter Magic, edited by Abby Elphinstone. So The Nutcracker is, of course, a Christmas ballet with wonderful music by Tchaikovsky, which is originally based on an old fairy tale first written by E.T.A. Hoffmann and then adapted by Alexandre Dumas. Set on Christmas Eve, The Nutcracker is the story of a young girl called Clara, who's given a wooden Nutcracker doll as a present by her uncle. That night, the Nutcracker comes to life and sweeps Clara away on a magical adventure. When I was growing up, one of my favourite Christmas traditions was going to the ballet or the theatre at Christmas, and seeing a production of The Nutcracker was always extra special. So when I was thinking about writing a story for Winter Magic, The Nutcracker was one of the first things that came to mind. It really does seem to capture the special magic of this time of year. I knew I wanted my story to be historical, so I decided to research the first ever performance of The Nutcracker, which took place in 1892 in the Grand Mariinsky Theatre in St. Petersburg. And the more I looked into this first production, the more interested I became, because there were some quite surprising things that I found out about it. Today, The Nutcracker is one of the most beloved ballets in the world, but the first production of it wasn't quite as successful as you might expect. For one thing, the composer Tchaikovsky wasn't initially very keen on the idea of writing this ballet at all. He didn't really like the story, and he was also having quite a hard time himself, because his sister, who he was very, very close to, had recently died. If that wasn't enough, the choreographer, Petipa, who was responsible for designing all of the dances for the production, was also having quite a difficult time. His 15-year-old daughter had been very, very ill, and then Petipa fell ill himself and had to step back from the production, handing over his job to his assistant. After all that, when it was finally time for the first performance in front of an audience that included the Tsar of Russia himself, the response from the audience was a little bit mixed. Some of the critics even wrote quite negative things about the production. And in fact, it wasn't until a few decades later that it became the favourite Christmas ballet that we all know today. But the main thing that caught my attention about this story is that in this original performance, a lot of the parts were played by children, pupils from Russia's Imperial Ballet School, including the two main parts of Clara and the Nutcracker Prince. Now, this was actually quite unusual at this time to cast children in such important central roles in a ballet. So Clara, the young girl who's at the centre of the Nutcracker story, was played by a young dancer called Stanislava Belinskaya, who was just 12 years old when she took this important part. I was very interested in Stanislava. She has this crucial role as the first person ever to dance the part of Clara, but after that she kind of slips away from dance history, and we don't find out that much more about her after that. Interestingly though, one of her classmates, who actually wasn't chosen for a part in the very first performance of The Nutcracker, went on to be one of the most famous ballerinas of all time, the dancer Anna Pavlova. I took the central character of Stanislava, or Stana to use the shorter form of her name, and I made her the central character in my story. A Dancer's Dream follows Stana as she steps into the spotlight and takes on the part of Clara. The original story I first wrote for Winter Magic has now been turned into this absolutely beautiful illustrated book with gorgeous artwork by Lizzy Stewart, and it's amazing to see how she's brought St. Petersburg and Stana's story vividly to life. To read you a little bit from the beginning of the book now, this is where we first meet Stana. Stana gazed out of the window at the softly falling snow. It was only 2 weeks until Christmas, and it had been snowing all day long. Now the blue and green tiled roofs and gold domes of St. Petersburg looked as though they had been spread with a thick white blanket. "Come away from the window, Stana," scolded Mamselle. Stana turned away from the window. After 2 years at the Imperial Ballet School, she knew better than to disobey the governess. But how could she rest? She had been in a fever of excitement since she had first heard they were auditioning for the role of Clara, the young girl in the Mariinsky Theatre's new ballet. It was certainly a rare and special role. Students at the ballet school did sometimes play tiny parts in the ballets, but for a pupil to play a leading role was unheard of. "They're looking for a girl of 12 years old to play the part of Clara. That's the same age as us," her best friend Anna had whispered to her in the dormitory. Somehow Anna always managed to find out everything first. The ballet was to be called The Nutcracker, although Stana liked the title better in French. In Russian, The Nutcracker sounded spiky and hard. In French, the words "le casse-noisette" were as soft as snowflakes, sweet as a Christmas sugar plum melting on her tongue. The words tinkled like the notes of Mr. Tchaikovsky's music. When Stana had first heard that music, she had known that she wanted to play Clara. The glistening notes of the piano had swept her far away from the Imperial Ballet School, away from lessons and walks around the garden 2 by 2, away from lying awake in the dormitory at night, whispering with Anna about her poorly sister Olga, or worrying about how Mamma would be able to pay the doctor's bills. When she heard the music, she was stepping through a pine forest, glittering with frost in the moonlight, her footsteps crunching in the snow. She was gliding through St. Petersburg's most elegant ballroom. Then she felt the warmth of the fire against her face. She saw the candles on the Christmas tree, Mamma's homemade gingerbread angels, and she was kneeling on the rug with Olga, drinking tea with jam. I hope you enjoyed that little taste of A Dancer's Dream, and of course also the peek of some of Lizzy's beautiful artwork. Now, we might not be able to go and see a performance of the Nutcracker in theatres ourselves this year, but I hope that with this book you'll have a little bit of that special magic